Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Vaquera. I'm the bureau chief in Washington at NewsNation. We'd like to say hello to our NewsNation audience and our Next Star audiences around the country on Facebook and whatever platform you are looking at. Welcome. I am so fortunate today to be joined by our senior national correspondent, Brian Enton, for once home in the Miami area, if not Miami itself. It appears that he is just across the intercoastal there, across from Mar-a-Lago. Of course, that is the scene of a very controversial and unprecedented, even dramatic raid yesterday of former President Trump's resort there in Palm Beach, Florida, just north of Miami, Mar-a-Lago, where federal agents showed up unannounced, we understand, and Brian's going to tell us more about that. Yesterday, spent several hours there looking for documents. So many questions are unanswered now. What were they looking for? Who authorized this search? How long were they there? What are they investigating? How much longer until we find out exactly what was happening yesterday? Again, in an unprecedented search of a former president's residence. Brian, thank you for joining us today. We do have several questions. I know you've been reporting this and breaking some news. First of all, describe what the scene is like there at Mar-a-Lago today.
Yeah, hey, Mike. Yeah, you mentioned it. We're on the other side of the intercoastal from Mar-a-Lago. This is pretty much as close as we can get. I'll kind of show you what the scene is like out here. There's a ton of media. This is where the media sets up because this is as close as the Secret Service will let us get. But there's this little beachy area down here. This is the intercoastal. That's Palm Beach over there. And then you can see where all those palm trees are. That's Mar-a-Lago with that sort of peach-colored building. That's where the raid happened yesterday. So it's pretty quiet out here today. This is where all the media sets up. There's been a lot of Trump supporters who have come out here, Mike. People really from around the region who have come out to show their support for the former president, not happy with what they saw with the search warrant that unfolded yesterday. But for the most part, pretty quiet right now.
Okay, we'd like to remind our audience and our viewers that this is an interactive conversation. So if anyone would like to ask a question or have something you think we should address or an answer that you would like to try to get from us, if we can't get it now, we'll try to get it later. Please leave a comment on this stream. And Brian, what do we know exactly about what the feds were looking for when they showed up yesterday at Mar-a-Lago?
So first of all, I hate to start this way, but there's a lot we don't know. I mean, so far, the Department of Justice, including the FBI and the local attorney general's office, no one has commented officially about what happened. But I've learned through sources that this search warrant started yesterday at 9 a.m. Out here at Mar-a-Lago, that it had to do with the retention of classified documents, that the FBI was coming out here looking for classified documents from when President Trump was in office, that they believe those documents were now at Mar-a-Lago where they are not supposed to be. So FBI shows up at 9 a.m. This was top secret. I'm told that they did not even alert the Secret Service that they would be coming here until right before. And the search lasted all the way until 6:30 p.m. So Wow. It was a 9.5-hour search. And I am told that they knew exactly what they were looking for. This isn't like they showed up and just started, going through all the documents and taking everything with them. They were after some very specific documents, and that is what they boxed up and took away yesterday evening.
Right. Okay. I'd like to remind our viewers, my name is Mike Vaquera. I'm the Washington bureau chief for NewsNation. Joining me now, our senior national correspondent from just across the intercoastal waterway in Palm Beach, Florida, from Mar-a-Lago, where the unprecedented and dramatic raid by federal agents of the former president's residence took place yesterday. And you heard Brian just describe a lengthy raid lasting from 9 in the morning until past 6 o'clock in the evening. And Brian, how does this happen? I mean, who has to sign off on something as unprecedented and drastic as raiding a former president's home?
Yeah, it's a good question. So because this happened in Palm Beach County, it was a federal judge who signed off on the search warrant that actually allowed it to happen. Because that search warrant is sealed right now, we don't know exactly which judge or magistrate it was, but we know it was definitely a judge or magistrate from within Palm Beach County, the federal courthouse, which we were just at about an hour ago. is very, very close to here. It was one of the judges who works in that building who signed off, and that is what sort of started the ball rolling for them to conduct this search warrant yesterday.
And how high does that have to go? So in other words, the FBI decides, or the Department of Justice, the FBI is part of the Department of Justice, decides that they are going to do something like this. Okay, and we still, as you've pointed out, we don't know exactly what they were looking for or what has spurred them to do something as unprecedented as this. But you have to assume that the top echelons of the Justice Department had to sign off on this. Do we know anything about that process?
Yes. So my sources told me that this went to the very top of the Justice Department and that the Attorney General was aware that this was happening. So it went all the way to the top. Granted, the Attorney General doesn't have to actually sign off on anything. It would be the federal judge. But I'm told that everyone all the way up to the Attorney General was aware of what was going down here yesterday.
Right. And yeah, the point is that before the FBI or the Department of Justice goes to that magistrative judge that you were talking about there in Palm Beach County, they have to decide that it's worth the effort, worth the controversy. And obviously there's been a lot of controversy before they were going to step forward. So they needed a warrant, and you've sort of touched on, gotten close to who it is that approved it, and a magistrate there. Let me ask you this. We've known since February from the National Archives that the former president took documents with him to Mar-a-Lago that were classified. Why is that a problem? Why could that potentially be part of what happened yesterday?
So, yeah, and we know that there have been investigators out here before at Mar-a-Lago, that they may have even had conversations with the president, met with the president's attorneys, took away boxes of evidence in the past. So there were clearly things here that were supposed to be in the National Archives, according to investigators, that ended up at Mar-a-Lago. So this isn't like a new controversy. What is new, which I think really no one saw coming, at least on the outside, was that this secret search warrant where the FBI shows up yesterday was going to happen. And it's interesting, a lot of people have called it a raid. A lot of people have said the FBI stormed the building. My sources were very, very clear that it was very low key. The FBI, they were not in the typical FBI jackets and garbs that you see kind of in the movies and the news when you see other search warrants. They were in plain clothes. They were coming and going throughout the day. It was so calm, I'm told, that the enormous staff at Mar-a-Lago didn't even realize what was going on, which is why none of this leaked out, which is really amazing to think about, Mike. I mean, we didn't find out about this until yesterday evening. It started at 9:30 in the morning. That just shows you how low-key the whole thing was, according to my sources, that even the people at Mar-a-Lago weren't exactly sure that this was happening.
And now, typically, the former president does not spend the summer at Mar-a-Lago, correct? So he wasn't even there.
Yeah, and that's not unusual at all. I mean, Palm Beach, like, it has the most billionaires. This is a crazy place behind
It's an unbelievable
like, the most billionaires. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
nuts. It has the most billionaires, I think, of any city in America, and it's a small little area, and it's a place where the billionaires come in the winter to escape the cold of the Northeast and other places. And it's like super hot right now. I mean, I'm starting to sweat. It's like, feels like it's 100 degrees out here.
Yeah.
So none of these rich people come down here this time of year. Trump doesn't come down here in the summer. It's kind of like a ghost town on Palm Beach. It's really a place where people come in the winter time.
And yet, in my experience covering presidents, or former presidents, if they are going to a particular place on a regular basis, there's usually a Secret Service presence there round the clock, just to ensure that nothing is happening under their noses while people are away, while the protectee, as they call them in the Secret Service, is away. Do you know if there were agents on the premises yesterday, and was there any sort of confrontation or discussion with the agents when they showed up, the FBI agents when they showed up at the door?
Yeah, so there were Secret Service here. We're told it's sort of a scaled down detail when President Trump is not here. So There were secret agents here. Even we just drove by a little while ago, and the only way you can get to the front of Mar-a-Lago is to drive by. You can't even stop.
Right.
And we saw someone with Secret Service uniform with a big gun standing out front. So they're here. But again, what I thought was interesting is this was so secretive that the FBI didn't even let the secret into their partner agency, really, within the feds, the Secret Service, until the very last moment.
Oh, so they didn't even tell them. The Secret Service was as surprised
No,
as anyone.
they
Yeah,
didn't tell them. I'm told it was about an hour before that they let them know this
gave
was
them a
going to
heads up.
happen. And Palm Beach Police, which is the local police department, which is has a very close connection with the Secret Service and the FBI, because you can imagine. I mean, they've got all the billionaires here. They've got Trump here. They put out a statement today saying they didn't even know, and they were sort of frustrated that they also weren't let in on this. So it was kept very, very close to the vest.
Right. I've been down there myself when the president has been in residence, when he was the president, and there are local police that are sort of manning the roads on the perimeter. I guess that would be the first. Yeah. So speaking of what people knew and when they knew it, do we have any idea when President Trump first found out that all this was going down at his residence?
So I don't have an exact time, but I would imagine very, very soon to when it started, because my sources told me that within a very short amount of time from when they went in the morning, that 3 different Trump attorneys showed up on the scene trying to figure out what was going on. So I would imagine it was relayed to him very quickly. Again, an interesting component to all this, his statement didn't come out until late afternoon, early evening. And we find out that this all started pretty early in the morning.
Right. And in his statement, a lengthy statement, he called it an assault. He decried what he considered the double standard with Hillary Clinton and the well-documented 2016 case of her emails and the various other things that he had reprised and the grievances and the complaints he's had about the treatment that he's received from the FBI and law enforcement, which he obviously considers unfair. Here in Washington, the Congress is out, but there has been a lot of response, largely from Republicans. Democrats have been relatively silent. Are you hearing anything from the Florida politicians or any national politicians? How can you characterize the response that we've heard from the allies of President Trump?
Yeah, so it's been for the most part, from what I've watched and seen, pretty unified from Republicans, especially here in Florida. Senator Marco Rubio put out a video on Twitter talking about how, essentially this is a banana republic kind of thing to do. This is only something that you would see in Nicaragua and Venezuela, where, where the government, goes in and conducts a search warrant on a prior president. Governor DeSantis here in Florida put out a pretty similar statement. So from what I've seen, Republicans seem pretty unified. Senator Rick Scott said something similar. So at least the Florida Republicans have been really unified calling this out.
And national Republicans, I can tell you from here in Washington, Brian, have been outraged, calling it an overstep of the authority, abuse of power on the part of the Department of Justice, implying that the White House was in on this somehow, or Democrats in general. For the record, the White House says they learned along with everybody else from tweets that this was happening. We are about to hear, Brian, and for our viewers, from the White House and the press secretary at the regular daily briefing, where I think we can expect a lot of the questions to be surrounding just what did the White House know, when did they know it, who told them what. I think, traditionally, Brian, in Washington, there's always been a bubble around the Department of Justice in terms of the White House, and the White House always sensitive to charges of political interference. Justice is blind. They don't want to put a thumb on the scales of justice, et cetera, et cetera. That obviously changed a great deal in the Trump administration, particularly towards the end of the Trump administration and during the transition, when the well-documented communications between the former president and officials at the Justice Department about how to investigate or whether to even investigate election results around the country. So what are we expecting I just want you to review a little bit, Brian. What are the unanswered questions? What do we need to find out? Why isn't there the transparency that we might expect from something this high profile from authorities?
So, it's interesting talking to experts in this field today when it comes to, former attorney generals and that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
People who work for the attorney general's office. People who aren't super partisan who I've talked to have all said that people should just sort of remain measured right now on both sides, because we don't know a lot. I mean, we don't know what they found. We don't know exactly what they were looking for.
Right.
We don't know how serious it is. I mean, obviously, it's always going to be somewhat serious when you've got the FBI going into a former president's house. But there's so much we don't know, and we don't know if we're going to get the answers anytime soon. I mean, again, I was just over at the federal courthouse. The warrant is still sealed. Typically, And, from covering stories with the FBI and with the, with the Department of Justice, like they're super tight-lipped. They don't give out information. Will the circumstances change a bit because this is a former president? Will there be some kind of obligation they feel like they have to have some kind of press conference to let the American people in on a little bit of what is going on? I'm sure those must be discussions happening behind the scenes, but as of now, we're 24 hours later, like zero official information coming out.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And one thing that the current Republican leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy, has already alluded to is if they take over the House of Representatives as expected, after the November elections and are sworn in January 3rd, there are going to be investigations by a Republican-controlled House galore. He already threatened, is Kevin McCarthy, the Attorney General, to save all the documentation because he is going to be called to the witness stand, and they are going to ask questions, not just over the course of hours, but I'm sure over the course of days and weeks, if in fact Republicans do control committee gavels. Brian, thank you so much. And to our viewers and our audience around the nation and our Nexstar stations around the country, thanks for joining us. Very informative. A lot of unanswered questions, Brian, as you have outlined, but dramatic and unprecedented events there at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida. Thanks, everyone.